Did you ever hear of the Blue People of Kentucky? Today's topic at Philosophy Insights is intersectionality. Professor Andrei Znamenski from the University of Memphis, Tennessee, analysis what has been termed the Wheel of Privilege.
They argue that our world is a bunch of smaller groups. Okay, we have to break apart these groups. So there are, within these groups, there are people who exploit others more than the others. If you're a black woman, you're exploited more than a black man. Okay, if you're Native Americans, you might be exploited maybe less than the black people. So they try to build up this hierarchy of oppression: who is more victimized, who is less victimized. So they built up these pyramids, or in this case, the wheel of power, privilege. Okay. It's mind-boggling, of course, what's going on. Yeah. Recently, I found the most exotic example of this intersectional Marxist approach in an attempt to single out the so-called blue people of Eastern Kentucky into an oppressed minority. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. I'm not joking. You can Google it, Blue People of Kentucky, if you have phones right now. Historically, indeed, there has been a tiny community of people in that area who had extremely pale bluish skin. But in her recent novel, popular novel, called The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, 2020, by one Kim Michelle Richardson, in this novel we see an attempt to play this oppression narrative, because the writer created a story about the sad fate of a girl from Kentucky who was discriminated against by surrounding society based on her bluish skin. The book about the blue girl received stellar reviews. One of the reviewers, in fact, issued a direct recommendation, and you can see it here, yeah, I quote, "Add blue to our spectrum of prejudice."
Jordan Peterson already pointed out quite a while ago that the logical consequence of intersectionality is to arrive at the individual. But that conclusion is never drawn by its advocates. Intersectionality instead replaces this with a very grim outlook on society. Of all the factors one could choose for social analysis, social groups are ranked by their oppression status, and everything else is put secondary from that.
If you go this way, if you take this notion, intersectionality notion, to the extreme, you will see that every one of us is a victim of something, yeah? And each one of us could be oppressed, okay? So logically, you have to come to a conclusion that ultimate minority is a human individual. You have to embrace what? Methodological individualism. But logically speaking, but logic is, that's what is missing on the other side of the political spectrum, okay? So I suspect that intersectionality as a way to find ideological escape might be buried under its own weight, might go down because we see these logical contradictions. So the fact that the left for the past 10 years resorted to cancel culture is a sign of desperation, I think. Because some leftists who still have the sparks of logic in their minds, they do revolt against this craze that is going on in the socialist thought collective, okay? But the problem is that right now they are the mainstream, okay? They call the shots. That is why we have this cancel culture. In old times, prior to 1960s, it was right and conservatives who tried to police morality. Now it's the left mainstream that in a puritanical mode seeks to police everybody, to find as big or small groups who are oppressed. Okay, tables were turned. Now it's the left and liberals who are the mainstream.
Professor Znamenski offers two strategies about how to move against the advocates of intersectionality.
Question was raised, what shall we do about this? And one may wonder, what can be done about all this? I think it's essential to show to students, and not necessarily to students, but to everybody else, that the left are not progressives. They are not countercultural, but they are true reactionaries, because they are the mainstream. Not only they're the mainstream, but they try to impose these mainstream views on the rest of society. And again, it shouldn't surprise us. There are some leftists who actually try to revolt, some reasonable people who try to revolt against this. For example, during this BLM insanity in the 2020 summer, there was a group of leftists who wrote a letter to Harper's Magazine, 100 left and liberal people, protesting against this expansion of cancel culture. Okay, and I also think we need to concentrate, to focus on internal squabbles among the left, because pedagogically speaking, it might be a good strategy on our part to show this insanity of the views they try to preach, to impose on us. Okay, so it's a good pedagogical strategy, for example, to tell students and other people about how they fight among each other, class or race or class. Okay. Of course, it works on those students who can think logically, But not everybody is ready to think logically, right? We know about this. So there is another effective way to deal with this cultural left insanity, or with woke people. It's old weapon that had been used by dissidents in the good old Soviet Union and other European countries. It's humor and laughter. So if you read memoirs of Soviet dissidents, you notice that they ridiculed and made fun of the regime and its politically correct sacred cows in everyday life, at work, at colleges. So the total fun of the sacred cows of the regime, and eventually it helped to topple down the entire matrix of the socialist regime, for instance, in the Soviet Union, in other Eastern European countries. And I would like to finish my talk with the quote of the late British journalist Malcolm Muggeridge, who was one of the first, by the way, to expose the horrors of Stalinist collectivization. He advised dissenters to use humor as the most potent weapon. In his essay, America Needs a Punch, that was published in 1958, he wrote, "Laughter is the most effective of all subversive conspiracies, and it operates on our side." Unquote. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for watching this video, and if you like the content, subscribe to Philosophy Insights.